3. Time for Beer Aware or Beer Awareness, really. I'm talking about different beer styles every week with Captain of Beer from Hallertau, Steve Plowman, with us. Good morning. Welcome back, Steve.
Good morning, Wammo. Nice to be back.
Yes, and we've, for the past couple of weeks, been on the lighter side of beers, now diving direct into the dark side.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's still technically lagers, cold fermented, but they're dark lagers.
Okay, refresh us on that definition of lager again.
Well, you can broadly define beers as ales and lagers. Lagers are generally light coloured, but not always. It's defined by the type of yeast used. So lagers are fermented cooler, and they tend to produce clean, crisp beers. But
Yep.
the yeast doesn't have any effect on or impact on the colour.
Because when it comes to dark beers, most people will be tempted to say, oh, that's a stout, just because that's dark.
Porters and stouts, yeah. But in Germany, there's a very long-running tradition of producing cold fermented dark beers, which are technically lagers, but they're dark
Okay,
and delicious.
yeah. Yeah, I do like a good dark beer, especially as we get into the colder winter months.
Yeah,
There's something about it.
it
Feels
does. Cozy up to the
Cozy.
fire, dark beer. But I mean, these dark lagers are actually quite good year-round, because what you've got, normally your dark beers, your porters and stouts tend to be big, rich, heavy, roasty,
Meaty.
burnt, can be dry.
A meal into themselves.
Exactly, whereas dark lagers are much more delicate, much more subtle. You've got the sort of the roasty richness, toasty sort of characters,
Yeah.
but they're very smooth and very, relatively light on the palate in terms of, weight and roastiness.
And one thing we've been discovering over the past couple of weeks, that within these styles, you've got styles upon styles, right?
Yes.
So,
So technically, I think the World Beer Cup, there's 86 separate categories of beer judging
yeah,
classes,
yeah.
which is quite a lot.
And talking about these these classifications, there's a couple of handy apps.
There is
The iPhone one, do you know what it's called? I think it's just the
BJCP style guidelines.
right. And if you've got an Android phone, just go BJCP, and it'll come up with the best app.
Yeah.
It's ported all those guidelines, the descriptions, the flavour, the mouthfeel, the history as well.
They're quite handled. And it does give you some commercial examples as well.
It does.
So you can look at a beer style you like and then try and track down some actual examples of that style.
Yes, for the American dark lager, they talk about the Heineken dark lager. I've never seen that.
Heineken do a dark lager, yeah.
Wow.
But
We don't
it's-
see that here at all, do we?
No, not at all. No, it's only brewed in Holland and very small distribution. And apparently I've tried it once, but it wasn't in very good condition.
Interesting.
But apparently it's quite a nice sort of dark lager straight out of the brewery.
That's just opened up the whole world about Heineken. Because I always thought Heineken, it's just one beer. That's all they do.
Well, that's the face of the international brand, but
Yeah.
in terms of what they produce in the original brewery for the local population is a little bit different.
There's also a Beck's Dark as well.
There you go. So the dark lagers are quite a common thing around Europe, whereas New Zealand, they're sort of a bit more like hen's teeth.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got a couple of examples.
I have. We're starting off with the international ones. This is a German dark lager. This is technically it's a Dunkel. So and the brewery is Konludwig Dunkel. So this is actually brewed in Fürstenberg, which is in Bavaria,
Yeah.
but north of Munich.
Would it loosely fall into the guidelines for the Munich Dunkel?
Munich Dunkel. So it is dark, but not as dark as some. So this is another very old style German beer. These sort of style of beers sort of relate back to the times when all beer was this colour. There was no golden beers.
Well, what's happened to make it dark?
It's just the way they malt it. Traditional maltings weren't very sophisticated, 300 or 400 years ago. And the malt came out quite dark. The drying process was pretty coarse and pretty harsh, and the malt developed a lot more colour because that's the way it was made. Whereas modern practices have made the malt get lighter and lighter and lighter with their indirect firing kilns and all this sort of stuff. But, a few hundred years ago, all the beer would have been this colour.
Okay, so for this colour, we're looking for a deep copper to dark brown in this, and that's...
So it is quite dark, yeah. You're getting it deep copper. I'd actually call that brown.
It's brown.
Colour. Yeah.
It's definitely not black.
No, it's not black. You can see through it. Well, if you're not paying attention, it looks quite dark. But hold it up to the light, and you do get some of those
Definite.
some deep sort of reddy, orangey brown colours coming through.
Yeah. Okay. And a light to medium tan head.
Yep. The
about
aroma is reasonably pleasant.
Yep. So it should be looking apparently for bread crusts in there.
Actually, just check the date on this sucker, and that's It's
overdue.
it's overdue.
That's the thing with all these imported beers, right?
It's March 17th of
Wow.
March this year.
They
Darker beers do tend to stand up slightly better to aging, but just sniffing
Is
that.
this from the New World?
Yeah,
They shouldn't be selling it, eh?
no.
All right.
Just on the aroma, you're getting that little bit of sort of cardboard sort of earthiness coming through.
That's what I love in a beer. Bit of cardboard.
It's a real challenge to get fresh imported
It
beer
is.
in this country.
Yeah. Actually, because last week we had the what was it? Wasn't it Munich Helles? What was last week?
Last week was the Pilsner.
The Pilsner.
We had the Pilsner Raquel.
And a friend currently over in Germany at the moment said, "Oh, you got to try that one, the Pilsner." And I said, "Yeah, we did. Wasn't so good."
This is rubbish.
But he's actually in the region, and
Yeah.
he says it's amazing.
Oh, it
direct
is
from the
amazing.
source.
The beer that we tried just wasn't the beer that left the brewery on the day, which is it's upsetting.
Okay, so trying this Dunkel
It's quite smooth.
falls rather flat.
You get a little bit of richness, and then you get a little bit of that sort of caramel, sort of wet cardboardy thing going on through the mid palate, and then really not a lot.
It just drops off, eh?
Just old. Yeah. Again, it's a disappointing sort of remnant of what that beer would have originally. But normally it's toasty, it's rich. You get sort of those bread crusts, but also you get nice cocoa, a nice sort of. If it's working properly, you get sort of a cocoa with hints of little coffee flavours around the edges as well.
Well, that's a shame, really. But you would imagine it would be a good drop from the source.
Oh, I've tried this in Germany, and it's a very good beer.
So the next example is your very own
Yeah,
from Hallertau,
number 4,
or
So
the
this is-
Deception.
the Deception. So this is a dark lager, German, based on the German style of Schwarzbier, which is very similar to the Dunkel, just a tiny bit darker. Tends to lift up the roast
We need 2 more glasses. Hang on.
a little bit more. A little bit more roast, tiny bit more colour. I've sculled mine, I can fill it up.
Okay.
Tiny bit more colour, a little bit more darkness on the head, and a little bit more richness on the palate.
Cheers.
Is what you're looking for. So,
Oh, you're very dark in the glass.
well, you can still see some ruby sort of colours through it.
Yeah.
Definitely not black. Quite attractive ruby highlights coming through. And then on the nose you're getting a little bit more,
Bit more roasty.
a little bit more roasty, but sort of that freshness. There's a hint of hop in there as well. But you're getting a nice sort of cocoa,
A little bit more like
chocolatey.
roasted coffee.
Yep,
Much more alive in the mouth.
much more alive in the mouth. You're getting the richness. The malt's fresh and clean, quite smooth. You are getting that little bit of toasted sort of character coming through, and there's quite a nice sort of mocha fatness on the palate as well.
Well, this one's an easy one because you know I love this one already, Steve. It's a good beer. It's a really really nice beer and obviously really fresh. And I mean, you're going to say that this is a great example of the Schwarzbier or black beer.
This is one of the beers we brew which is actually surprisingly true to its origins.
Yeah.
Because normally we start off with an international beer and mess with it quite a lot using local hops and local malt. But this one, the hop character is very subtle. So you're getting all those malts, and the malts we use in this are German malts, the Munich malt and the German roasted malt. They
And how do
dehusk it.
they come to you? How does that arrive?
5 and 25 kilo bags.
Yeah.
I mean, we do use the German malt simply because in New Zealand they don't produce these style of malts yet. So this beer is quite an authentic German style dark beer.
And it's apparently is a variant of the Munich Dunkel that we just had as
It
well.
is. It's sort of a development. But the trick with this beer is the German roasted malt we use, they actually dehusk it. They remove the husk, which is where all the stringency and dry sort of burnt, bitter characters sort of end up.
Okay.
So that's why you get those roast characters, but they're quite delicate, quite smooth, quite light, and quite delicious.
And removing the husks, is that a manufacturing process or is that done by hand?
No, I don't know how they do it. It would be a fairly industrial process because
Sure.
they produce a lot of malt
Yeah, exactly.
out of Germany.
I thought it was little nimble fingers, perhaps. Very, very nice.
So both these beers are 5.1%.
Mm.
They tend to be around that sort of low fives, this style. that little bit of extra alcohol warmth sort of smooths out that roasted malt caramel.
So that's on purpose, yeah?
Yeah.
It's not just because that's the way it comes out.
Mm. These beers, if you make them lower, sort of in the mid fours, they can get a bit thin in the back palate, and their roastiness can linger a little bit.
Well, I really enjoyed those. Unfortunately, about the first one, it was past its use by date, but I could tell that it would have been quite good in its day. But otherwise, of course, the Hallertau Deception, lovely. 2 examples of dark lagers.
People should drink more dark lager. Don't be scared of it.
Don't be scared of it, especially and try one today.
Try one today.
We will try and do in the future week the European Amber Lager because we've just skipped that.
Yeah.
But that has been great. Of course, this is Beer Aware, and you can find this as a video once more up at kiwifm.co.nz. You can see what we were drinking as well, and also the captain himself, Steve Plowman from Hallertau. See you next week.
See ya.